All right, so today we're going to look at the very last area of Unit 4 Bio, and this area is actually all about what we call the genetically modified and the transgenic organisms, okay? And if you know genetically modified organisms, they're GMOs, and if you can see here, GMO spelt backwards is OMG. Just let that sink in. All right, pause the video here, have a go at these three good questions. We have to go through these as well as the ones from last class because we forgot to go through those. So make sure we go through them. All right, so in the study design, we want a distinction between these GM, so genetically modified, and transgenic organisms, and their use in agriculture, which is very relevant to us, to increase crop productivity, so we want to make them more productive, and to provide resistance to insect predation and or disease. Okay, and also we're going to talk once again about what we call the biological, social, and ethical implications that are raised by these GM and transgenic organisms. So first thing, let's talk about, would you eat GMOs? So we can say that people are counting too many calories and not enough people are counting chemicals. GMO, absolutely dangerous. Poking a random needle into a tomato. Genetic technology is driven by bad science. And, if you ever heard of them, Monsanto, they're the bad guys eating Monsanto-produced products. That's essentially like putting a gun to your head. So what's genetically modified organism? So a genetically modified organism is any living organism whose genetic material, so DNA, has been altered using a genetic engineering technique. So something like restriction enzymes. Endonucleases are restriction enzymes, or CRISPR, our favorite restriction endonuclease. Transgenic organisms, on the other hand, is a type of GMO. So it's a type of genetically modified organism, but the modification actually comes from the addition of genetic material from another species. Okay, so for example, here we're taking the a cell which is a zygote, okay, and this zygote is going to then become a mouse, okay, and so we might, before this zygote actually gets a chance to do mitosis and become a fully fledged mouse, we might take some DNA from a human or from a chimpanzee or from a bacteria, all right, insert it into the DNA of that mouse using those CRISPR and restriction endonuclease technology, and then hopefully, if we've done it right, we're going to get a mouse as the end product that might do something that mice shouldn't be able to do because we've got DNA in that mouse that belongs to something else. So it might, if we got it from a bacteria, we can actually make mice glow in the dark. Okay, we can make mice grow ears, which all sounds pretty full on, but this isn't generally where transgenic organisms come in. Where they come in is growing bacteria in agar plates in a lab, okay, and that bacteria might have, for example, if these bacteria have the human gene for insulin, that is a transgenic bacteria that now can produce insulin for us. So no one's going to question that that's bad. The question comes over here, is this bad or not? Let's talk about the benefits of GMOs first, okay? So let's talk about an example of a genetically modified plant used very close to home is actually called Roundup Ready canola, okay? So for example, I know near Horsham and stuff, they grow lots and lots of canola, and also towards the other side of Hamilton, also lots and lots of canola, and a lot of the canola nowadays is all this called Roundup Ready canola. And Roundup Ready canola was developed by that company Monsanto, big evil guys, and it was available for commercial production all the way back in 2003, so quite a while ago. So what they did is took this GOX gene from the bacteria O. anthropisic And they actually took this GOX gene and we spliced it into the canola plants, giving these canola plants the code for a specific enzyme which breaks down glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, which is that really common herbicide that we use. And it turns Roundup harmless, okay? It just breaks up Roundup and the glyphosate, and the canola will no longer be affected by the Roundup. And so this is really great because now we can actually go and spray all this canola from a plane or from your tractor directly with a bunch of Roundup, and it will kill off all of the little weeds that are growing, but the canola itself is happy, okay, and it's going to grow nice and big, okay? So that's a really clear benefit of using a GMO. But there are some implications of GMOs, okay? They're not a new technology, but there's a lot of things that we still don't know about GMOs. That is a true fact, all right? But it's probably not as bad as a lot of people think they are. Okay, probably one of the biggest true implications is that GMO pollens can actually be carried to a non-GMO crop. And so if you read this little box of Cheerios, it says not made with genetically modified ingredients, but a little star they have to put in because it says trace amounts of genetically modified, also known as genetically engineered material, can be present due to the potential cross contact during manufacturing and shipping. Okay, and I've got a really great example of this. Miss French's parents, they have an organic farm, and they used to grow canola, but because as an organically certified farm, they're not allowed to use GM canola, but because their neighbors used to use GM canola, they couldn't assure the certifiers that their neighbor's pollen didn't cross-pollinate with their non-GM canola, okay? Whether that's a bad thing or a good thing, I don't know, okay? But it's simply true, okay? We can't completely control it. Another thing is that we can actually drive resistance in specific weeds, specific insects, specific pathogens such as bacteria. And that can be seen in this map here, where in 2002, we had very, very few states in the US that actually had glyphosate-resistant species of weeds. So we only had a couple that had one species. All the way in 2012, now we've got a bunch of states that all have lots and lots and lots of weeds that are now resistant to glyphosate, okay? So the increased use of Roundup, because of the availability of Roundup Ready canola, has actually created a resistance in these other weeds, okay? One question now that this is where it starts to come up as we're not too sure, there has to be more research, is to do with the nutritional profile of GMO. And so this little nutritional analysis is saying that GMO, so genetically modified corn, compared to non-GMO corn, is significantly less nutritious than this corn. This is all wrong. This was a bad study, okay? But regardless, it does raise the idea that we do have to make a few analyses, okay? And we have to have good studies doing these analyses. People ask, is it toxic? Okay, no solid studies have shown GMOs to be directly toxic, okay? But it is a question we can ask. And if we don't know, can we say it's not toxic? And then also, lastly, we do have to consider that some people have specific lifestyle choices. They prefer organic foods. They believe that they are better for them, and that's completely their right. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying they're right, okay? But it's a right someone has, okay? So I want you to have a crack at doing the same A3 table like this, like we did last time, this time talking about the insertion of genes into plants, which doesn't raise as many big implication issues, but there are still a lot of implication issues. And then also the insertion of genes into animals. Okay?